and today we are joined by two other podcasters. It's the husband-wife duo of the Zen Parenting podcast. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Just so people have a background of what your podcast is, how did it come about? You know, this husband-wife combo. You know, how did the whole thing start?
The way that our podcast started was I wrote a book called The Self-Aware Parent, and I did an interview with Todd and Laura Mansfield, who have a show called Parenting Unplugged, another great podcast out there, and they have their own network called Pagateam. And we just really hit it off. We had similar belief systems, and we just had a really fluent conversation. So they asked if I would be willing to do a podcast as well for their station. And right away I knew I didn't want to do it by myself, and I offered up my husband here, Todd.
She didn't even ask me.
I didn't even ask. And, you know, we ended up kind of diving in. And interestingly enough, Todd and I had just started teaching a class called Zen Parenting. And so we knew right away what we wanted to name the show. And it was kind of simple.
I don't think we knew what we were getting ourselves into.
No, we didn't. But that was better, right?
Right. If I knew what I was getting myself into, I may have been a little more scared. But because I didn't know any different, I just said, all right, let's jump in.
Yeah, we jumped in with both feet. And we, you know, since the beginning, kind of like you and we were just talking about, Stephen, before the show started, we just decided to talk about who we really are and what we believe in and experiences we have, and just be as honest and authentic as we could be. And I hope that translates, but we also just have a good time doing it. So it's made it a great job.
Yeah, and that really comes across. One of the things that you guys say often is when it comes to parenting is that it's simple, but it's not easy.
Right.
You know, and I take that so seriously because it seems so simple. You read like something in a book, or you hear something in a podcast, and then you go to implement it, and it becomes so difficult. And, you know, Todd can appreciate this. I'll use a sports analogy. You know, it's someone who can throw 3,000 free throws in a row, says, oh, I got that free throw down, and then they go in to play a pickup basketball game, and there's just so many moving parts. There's so much going on there. When you say simple, it's not easy. Is that what you're referring to? Is this sort of like the difficulty of in the moment of being a parent?
Yeah, I mean, being present is really the only thing that we give a gift to ourselves, which is, you know, the gift of presence. And it's so easily to get distracted with, you know, your life, your work, your kids, your family, your own personal time. And, you know, I find myself often thinking about yesterday or something that happened 10 years ago, or worried about what I'm doing tomorrow, or how I'm going to pay for our 3 daughters' college tuition. And all those worries are just really, if you think about it, kind of silly, but yet it still consumes quite a bit of my energy and my time, and it's something I'm trying to work through, to be honest with you.
When you say you're being present with your children and not having those the pressures of your work life, the pressures of your social life interfering with your parenting life, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
If you think about it, the best gift you can give to your kids is complete and total presence, or mindfulness is another term that Cathy and I like to use, which basically means that when you're with them, be with them. Don't be worried about what's going to happen tomorrow, and don't worry about a mistake you made yesterday. Just be completely present for them.
And like a way to think about it is that, you know, something happens with our children, or they say something to us, or we have an experience with them. And instead of focusing on what's happening right there, we focus on what it could mean, or what it meant for us in the past, or what it may mean in the future, or what other people will think, you know, the social pressure of being a parent. And so we get lost in that idea, and then we parent from there instead of from, you know, Todd keeps saying being present and mindful, instead of really parenting. You know, like if a child yells at us, if we were really present, we could say, oh my goodness, you sound so angry. Let's talk about this. You know, we could be, but instead, if a child yells at us, we get offended. We think, oh no, this kid's going to be a bully. Oh no, this kid is impolite, and we parent from that place. And
there's the oh no, you didn't.
Exactly. And we get into that "you're disrespecting me" thing, which I'm not. It's not that I'm saying my children have a right to disrespect me, but a lot of the times they're just trying to communicate. They're just trying to be heard.
That's a good example you brought up, is the kid yelling back to you. and then the offended part, and then the, oh no, you didn't, and then you go back to your primal mode, which the way you were raised, or maybe it's genetic, or maybe it's, who knows, cultural, I don't know. But we want to then reestablish this hierarchy as though I'm the parent, you're the child, you'll listen to me no matter what. Tell me what's wrong there, and tell me if there's something right there with that.
Well, I think that like you said, there's a lot of reasons why we parent the way we do. Some, nature, nurture, experience, what we see in society. But I think a lot of times when, the example of a child yelling at us, and again, there could be many different examples, but we go to fear. Instead, we go to this place of, oh no, how do I make this better? How do I get back on top? How do I make sure this child knows I'm in control? Which to me, just even the word control in parenting, it doesn't work. You can be in charge in a home, meaning the parents should be the people in charge. They are the adults. They are the ones that help with safety and support. But to be in control of another person, to me, is not only impossible, but you're going to keep banging your head up against the wall because, again, our Todd and my belief system, or what this podcast and parenting is based on, is understanding that when you have a child or adopt a child, you are supporting them in becoming themselves. You are not supporting them in becoming like you. Of course, you can talk to them about your values, everything from, religion to politics to, your sports team. But at the same time, you have to honor where they're coming from, too. You are raising a human being. You are not raising someone to be like.
Well, and I'll take a different perspective on it, although I do agree with what Cathy just said. But, most of the time when your kid yells back at you, usually it's something that they learned from you. So it's very challenging to, if you happen to be a parent who does a lot of yelling at them, of course they're going to yell back. Or if they're not, they're going to suppress a lot of emotion. So, I call out myself and all the other parents that listen on the show saying, they will role model what they see, not by what they hear. So if they're seeing, two parents yelling at one another or a parent yelling at them, of course they're going to use that same type of behavior because they think that that's what works. They think that that's what's going to happen. So, a lot of the times I try to make ourselves accountable instead of try to, like Cathy said, control this little person to be exactly who you want them to be. Because you know what? No matter how much you try, who they're going to be is not what you want. It's who they're going to organically happen to become.
And like you said, not what you want, meaning it may not be what you envisioned, right, or it may not have been the way that you were, but they're going to become fully themselves. And that's, as a parent, that should be our focus. It's not they need to be this, but they need to be themselves, whatever that looks like.
Let me ask you a question, because I'm listening to a duo, a husband and wife, going back and forth talking about raising a child. Obviously, Cathy, you got a background and you write books about parenting. A lot of us don't have that luxury. I have never written a book on parenting. Chris, when was the last time you wrote a book on parenting?
That would be never.
So, me and my wife, we have this, we're always second guessing ourselves and each other, but we work through it. But it's not the easiest thing in the world. A lot of times we put a lot of our focus on the kids. Like when I talk to other people, it's about the kids. But one thing I never think about until I hear you guys talk about it is this parent-to-parent relationship. Tell me a bit more about that and how. What do you suggest people do? How does it work for you guys?
Well, there's all different types of families out there, and I don't mean to discriminate against one style or another, but I feel like the marriage in most cases is the foundation for a family.
Or the partnership.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a marriage. The partnership is the foundation for the family, and unless the husband and the wife, or if it's two guys or two girls, whatever it is, you guys need to respect one another, and then the parenting will just kind of naturally be easier. It's very, I grew up in a family with a lot of chaos, and I have parents who got divorced when I was 18. They should have gotten divorced when I was 7, but they tried to stick together for the sake of the family, and that was a challenging childhood to be brought up in. And if you can figure out how to love your partner, I think that is by far the best gift that you can give to your children. And The only way you can love your partner is if you love yourself. And I use those words sometimes even with my own dad. I said, Dave, you got to love yourself. And it's completely foreign to him. And I don't know, Cathy, maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
I will, and some of the words, these can be interchangeable. Todd's saying self-love. I use self-awareness all the time. You have to know yourself. You have to understand yourself. The better you understand yourself and have compassion for yourself, the better you can have compassion for others. If you're closed down about yourself, if you're judgmental of yourself, if you carry around a lot of guilt and a lot of shoulds and a lot of, anger, sadness, all those things that you haven't dealt with, then that's the way you view the world. That's the way you view your partner. That's the way you view your children, is through that lens. And the clearer, like I have a vision board above my desk, and I have something written down that says clear channels. Like my work on myself is to have clear channels. And again, this is never perfected. I work on this forever. But the more clear I am about who I am and what I'm doing, the clearer I see the people I love. And so it starts with us, and the question you asked, then it goes to the partnership where you're setting that foundation for the family, and then that trickles down to the children. Mm-hmm. So then they get the real you. They get they develop their own clear channels too, because they see themselves more clearly.
Well, and one thing I'll jump in, Stephen, is you talked about second-guessing yourself, and as parents, we always do that. And the only advice that I try to give other people who are willing to listen, or even myself, is to go easy on ourselves and to forgive yourself for screwing up. Because, I try to tell my daughters that I make a mistake every single day, and that we're very human. I remember growing up, I used to think my parents were perfect until I saw for myself that they were not. And, there's no reason why we can't kind of tell them, hey, we're not perfect. We're doing the best we can. And I think, especially women, they tend to beat themselves up more. I think us as guys, we tend to go a little bit easier on ourselves. We screwed up, we tried, didn't work out. Whereas women, I think, try to hold themselves up to some fake form of perfection.
Unreachable perfection.
Yeah, it's not reachable.
Yeah.
So that sparked my interest when you said those words.
So I'll shape this question just a little bit differently. This question goes both ways with me and my wife. A lot of times we'll be listening to Zen Parenting podcast. We'll come away from it, and we've got different strategies for approaching the same problem. And one of the things that I don't like is I don't like to sound condescending to my partner and say, well, here's how I would handle this situation. How do you guys handle that? Because it's never cut and dry. If there was an easy answer for this, this goes back to your saying it's simple, but it's not easy. How do you handle this sort of like condescending, here's how I would handle this, and not have that sort of like meltdown into a small fight over something it's almost unnecessary?
Well, it's like you said, it kind of goes back to talking, even when it's not about parenting, talking to each other in a respectful way where you trust that each other has the best interest at heart. And I'm backing up out of this question to this bigger picture just because I think it makes a difference. Like the way that Todd and I talk to each other about everything, regardless if it's parenting or putting the garbage out or anything, is Todd knows that I am not intentionally trying to hurt him. Now, do I hurt you sometimes?
Absolutely.
Of course. It's my intention, but Todd will say, or I will say, wait a second, that hurt. Or, wait a second, I'm not sure I'm hearing you right. Or, wait, what are you trying to say? And then we have a conversation through it. And again, that lends to our parenting is that when we do have different opinions about things, but we're thoughtful about when we bring it up. Like, for example, we would never bring up a disagreement about the kids in front of the kids because it causes a problem. And also, if we're doing it, they've gone to bed and we need to discuss it, it's not, I never have an intention of I have to win. My intention is I need to say what I feel, because I really don't, I kind of use the word feel more than think, because usually with parenting, there's more an intuitive, instead of, hey, this book said do this, it's more like, ooh, I felt like this should have happened. Here's what I feel, and then Todd, what do you feel? I want to hear you as much as I'm heard. And again, it's not, I'm making it sound really stiff. Usually it's more of a conversation, but I feel like those are the big things. Number one, we don't want to hurt each other. Todd's nodding over here, so I think we're...
Well, yeah, and what I was going to say is, first of all, Cathy's a little more evolved in that want to win a little bit more than she... Maybe it's my macho competitive nature, but she's right. as soon as it becomes a battle of egos, nobody's going to win. But the one thing I was going to say, and I'll throw a hypothetical, like let's say Cathy decided to give all the girls a candy bar after dinner. And I thought that was the worst decision in the world. Even if I completely disagree with her decision to give the kids a candy bar after dinner, I'm not going to go against what she says, even though I completely disagree. After the kids are in bed, then we'll have a conversation. But kids are very smart, and if they know that they can go to two different parents and getting two different answers, they used to try to do that, but they realize that there's no point now.
Even when they still try and do things like, well, Dad said no, what about you? The language I always use is your dad and I are a team in this, so if he said no, then I say no too. And then if it's something that I'm like, Todd, maybe you were being a little harsh or a little difficult, that's something we talk about later, and I really do bring it up. Because I think a lot of what happens with parents is maybe they don't bring up the little things, and then when something bigger happens, everything explodes. Where they do end up having a big fight, because then they'll say, well, what about last Tuesday? And what about 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, deal with it when it happens.
In the moment.
And, like later that day or whatever, not in front of your kids, but like Cathy says, I think what happens a lot to parents and, relationships is they let things kind of go, just build up, and it's like a tea kettle. Eventually it's going to whistle and things won't be good. So yeah, it's important to do that.
And it's hard to hear the simple things when you're still built up with things that happened 3 weeks ago.
So I have a question. So if I'm understanding what you just said correctly, it sounds like you try to present a united front to your children. You don't want to give them like mixed signals. What would you say to somebody who said that being kind of dishonest to your child because you're not the same person, you're two independent people, you're going to have different opinions, and to always unite against them was one, not being honest, and two, was not really being fair, because it's not really you and Todd are a team against the child. It's you, Todd, and your children together are all one team.
Absolutely. And Chris, it's interesting the language you use, because I've never felt that it's even, and again, I know you're just, posing the question, but I never feel like it's Todd and I against the kids. Like that word against doesn't, like even when you say it, it kind of makes me, because it's not an against thing. I think the thing about Todd and I being a united front is about a sense of safety for my children. So they know that in our home, that Todd and I are on the same page, that we have the same interests, at heart, that we're focused on their well-being in a very connected way. But at the same time, we're very honest. See, there's all these, like we were talking about the moving parts with the basketball game. I didn't really understand that analogy, but I guess I'll...
You'll learn someday, kid.
Okay, but all the moving parts is that, of course, at the same time as that we're a united front, we do share when we don't agree on something. Todd and I will say...
Well, I like good music, and you like bad music.
I was just going to say that.
You like bad music.
Like on the simpler world, or simpler idea here, I like a certain kind of music, Todd likes a certain kind of music, he likes certain TV shows, I like certain TV shows. I'm okay with a peppermint patty after dinner. Todd struggles with it, and the girls know that. But at the same time, when a question has been asked and answered, we are not going to be divisive in that moment about it. Like if Todd, again, I'm using the simple one, but if we get in the car and Todd already puts on his song, we're going to listen to that song. It's already on. But in a little bit, we'll be listening to mine.
Yeah, I think the idea is if we can celebrate our differences, because I don't want these girls to think that we are the same, because we are two very different people. Yeah. And hopefully what they figure out is that we love each other and we support one another. But, I would never want to project the idea that mommy and daddy feel the exact same way about everything.
But in the parenting role, in this home, we are a team, and we honor and respect each other in a way where we do not divide to, we may have differences of opinion, but like I said, if something has been asked and answered, like if the girls asked if they could go to a movie and Todd already said no, I'm not going to then override him and say, no, Todd, I think but maybe I will talk to them that night and say, hey, next time, let's talk about this beforehand. It's because all we are in parenting is we're works in progress, I don't think that there's any absolute answers. I don't think that Todd and I are always right, and I don't think we're always wrong. I think that it's a practice, but that, your question, Chris, about, we do have differences, but we try and respect our differences rather than feel like we need to be divided.
Well, and you can get into semantics too. Like, let's go to the candy thing. I don't know how much I would want to explain to them, but I would say something like, Mommy said this, and that's the way it is. I don't necessarily say, hey, I
agree with
you.
Right.
I just say, what Mama decided is what we're going to do.
In this situation, this is what we're going to do. Yeah.
So some of it might be semantics, but that's my 2 cents.
Okay, well, we're coming down to the last few minutes of our podcast here because we wanted about 30 minutes. And I want to give all of the listeners of this program information about your show. Also give them information about the books that Cathy does. So I'll give you this opportunity to talk about Zen Parenting Radio.
Thank you. Well, of course, you can find us at zenparentingradio.com. And you can also find us on iTunes. You can also find us on Stitcher, which is a application that you can get on your smartphone. It's just an easy way to get podcasts. And my website is Cathy C. Adams, which it's CATHY, Adams.com. And at that website, you can find Zen Parenting. You can find my books. I have The Self-Aware Parent and The Self-Aware Parent 2. I also write a blog for Chicago Now, which is part of the Tribune Company, and I write for Chicago Parent Magazine. So everything is kind of all in that one place.
And I don't do anything.
And Todd and I teach classes together. We do presentations about everything under the sun. So that's another place you can find us. And as I was saying at the beginning, Todd has a really good voice for men, I feel like, which is why I'm so glad we do this together.
Yeah, I mean, the show started just so we don't ever want anybody to agree with us just for the sake of agreeing. What we want is to facilitate a discussion that otherwise may not happen between a relationship, a couple who have to stimulate a conversation. Even if they completely disagree with 100% of what we're saying, as long as they're listening and engaged. And, our listenership has grown. We've done actually just 100 podcasts. Yesterday was our 100th podcast. So we've been doing it about 2 years, once a week. It's about a 30 or 45-minute podcast, and we would love it if your listeners would give us a try.
Well, that's where I caught up with you guys, was on Stitcher, and I'm on Stitcher as well. I looked for your Self-Aware Parent on Amazon, Cathy, and I didn't see it, but I only see it on your website.
It is on Amazon also. Let's see. You could put in Cathy Adams or Cathy Kasani Adams. It should pop up with The Self-Aware Parent.
Right, and there's actually another book called The Self-Aware Parent also.
Yeah, there's another woman who wrote a book called The Self-Aware Parent.
But Cathy's is a lot better.
You should be able to find it if you do a little search. They're both there.
Okay, well, thank you both very much for being on Two Beers with Steve. I had a blast. I listen to you guys all the time, and when you're talking about facilitating conversations, a lot of times me and my wife listen to your podcast, and then we go into deeper, more involved, and more personalized discussions about the material you brought up, and it's helped us out immensely. And right now we're in this period where everything we seem to do is awesome, and our house is so quiet that I almost don't even need Zen Parenting Radio anymore. I'm there.
That's what we want.
What I really like about your show is the focus that you bring on self-awareness, because I think that is so key to not only being an effective parent, but just to being an effective, happy human being. If you don't bring that self-awareness to the table, you're always kind of reacting to your programming. You had mentioned it earlier, the child yells at you, and then you let your emotions take over and react. And if you have that awareness to say, I have a choice here, I can let my emotions take over and go down a path that, an hour from now I'm going to be, I'm going to be upset that I didn't, handle that better. The self-awareness gives you the option to sit back and say, wait a minute, what would be the best way to reach an outcome that I'm going to, that's going to be healthy, so that focus that you guys bring to that, I think, is fantastic. So, keep up the good work.
Thank you. And, what you just said, Chris, real quickly, is it's about creating a tiny bit of space between stimulus and reaction. And it could be a microsecond, but instead of just reacting to your kids driving you nuts because they drive me nuts, see what you can do. Maybe it's a quick deep breath, whatever, but if you can create a little space between whatever they're doing to drive you crazy and how you react to it, you'll be a better parent.
Right, and again, you're going to be not only a better parent, but a better partner. Yep. You're going to be better at your job. Dealing with people, your customers, dealing with your coworkers. It's one of the single biggest keys to being successful and to being happy.
Exactly. It's a lifestyle, and that's why some people who even listen to our show don't even have children, because they find a greater awareness for themselves and just a more peaceful life. And we couldn't ask for more.